Welcome to the Wanting to Wealthy podcast, where we talk about all things money. If it relates to money, we're going to talk about it on this podcast. I am Ashley Hogan. I focus on personal financial planning, sustainability, minimalism, and just being successful and building the life that you really want to have within the finances that you can have access to, not just what you happen to know at the moment. Last episode, we talked about what to do when the unexpected happens. And one of the examples that I gave was when somebody comes up with a major illness. And not only was my mom a long-term fighter of cancer when I was growing up, but my best friend slash roommate was diagnosed last year with cancer. We're actually in the 1 month or 1 year anniversary since surgery date.
So close.
So I figured I'd bring her on so we could talk about how that unexpectedness worked not only within her life and how those around someone with an unexpected diagnosis can help and how that could change things. So with that in mind, this is Alesha Jess. Tell us about yourself and kind of your background and your diagnosis and things, if as much as you'd like to share.
Absolutely. So my day job, I work for my family business. I took over my grandmother's position doing bookkeeping for my dad like 16 years ago. I also make jewelry. I'm a silversmith by personal trade. And let's see, my hobbies include reading, singing, long walks on the beach. Anyways. So so Joseph and I found a lump in my breast. It was February of last year. And we were like, this feels kind of weird. We'll get it checked out. And they just, I had wonderful care. I was very, very lucky. They just kept saying, hey, this is just a little weird, and we feel like we should bump you up to the next level of care. And we went all the way to biopsy, and it came back as cancerous. And I was sitting at work, and because I work for my dad, I was able to literally just say, Dad, we need to go inside and talk to Mom real quick because they just told me that I have cancer. So I was very lucky in that I was already amongst my support system literally as soon as I found out. But I was, it, yeah, to say that it was surprising is a mild way of putting it, because the last instance of breast cancer in my family, you have to go back to my grandfather's mother. So it's a long ways back. Man.
So leading up to it, do you think that if you had not had the support system medically that you had, would you have continued to advocate for yourself considering your history?
I don't know that I would have, considering my history. I know that my sister had a benign lump taken out probably like 10 years ago. Gosh, maybe longer now. And so it's just one of those, I wouldn't have thought much about it, and it probably would have grown and potentially spread to my lymph nodes before I may have fought that hard to get it looked at more, because we didn't have the history. As far as I know, neither Heather nor I, my sister, have the any of the genetic markers for breast cancer, and our family is generally pretty dang healthy. So I may not have.
So, my first step that I talked about in the last episode when something weird happens is just taking care of the physical and the emotional stuff first. So, what were some first steps that you made?
Um, First steps, telling my parents. They were like, we're here for whatever you need. Next, I called Joseph. Unfortunately, he was in class. So that was fun. I was like, so they told me I have cancer. He's like, we're on recording right now. And I'm like, they get a no too then. And then I called you and I was like, so this is happening. And you're like,
Mhm.
okay, what are we doing? I said, well, today, thankfully I had an incredible care team. Kathy Nepper was my patient coordinator. Yes,
Yes.
patient coordinator. And I said, this is the time I'm meeting with her. Can you be there? And you're like, done.
Mhm.
which I really appreciated.
So first thing was calling the people.
Calling people.
You happen to have the position where by telling your parents, you were also telling your employer.
Yeah.
How did your dad react as an employer?
As an employer, he and I had already chatted about needs like off and on throughout the years in case something happened. And we had recently moved from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. So I knew that we had the ability already for me to be able to work from home, which would not have been possible previous to uh, fall of 2023. So having that ability and knowing that as an employer, he basically knew that we needed to know what my time frame was, as we found out from the doctors what they wanted to do, what's the time frame, um, the ability to run payroll ahead, because thankfully I can do that in our very small business. And then after that, you know, my mom was doing the errands I would normally do. You were helping double check me on numbers just to make sure that when I was inputting time cards, like I'm doing it right.
Right.
Because, a couple weeks out was
Mhm.
when I started doing serious input again. So, but as an employer, thankfully, because my father and I have worked out a system over the years to keep things as clean and concise as possible, he seemed to feel pretty comfortable about the situation, how we were going to handle it.
Mhm. And I know your situation was unique because you're in a family business, but do you know any like with being in such a small business,
Mm.
do you know how that could have financially impacted you?
Um, yes, if I were not working for my father in a family business, the likelihood is that I would have had to use up all of my sick or vacation pay, whichever I had. As a bookkeeper, they would have had to find someone to replace me for at minimum a month, because most employers are probably like, you need to at least take a month off so that we know that you're going to be okay.
Mhm.
Um, and hopefully there would still be a job waiting for me when I got back.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
not being a family business, there would be a lot of different variables to take into account.
Yeah, and being in that small of a business where there was only less than five employees,
Mhm.
FEMLA doesn't kick in
Mm-mm.
federally.
No.
Oregon does.
Yes.
Oregon paid family medical leave does kick in, so you would have gotten that being in Oregon, but that while you are not the main contributor to your guys' finances, that
Mhm.
would have impacted your personal finances as well,
Yes.
in the way you guys do things. What other things were happening financially at that time?
Oh man. Okay. So my husband has worked for many years for Lynn Benton Community College, and in March of 2023, they decided that they were going to cut their computer science program as well as several other programs. Forgive me, I don't remember them all off the top of my head. But in choosing to cut that, Joseph, in his final year at LBCC, so this would have been from September 2023 to June 2024, he was teaching two instructors worth of course loads basically the entire time. So he was teaching, what, somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 credits worth, I think,
Yeah, a term.
per
Yes.
term. And so that final term, he's scrambling
Mhm.
to make sure that people get their stuff done, that
Mhm.
any incompletes were taken care of, that people had transfer information,
Mhm.
basically
Yeah.
anything to get them out the door. So he was swamped.
Yeah. So he was swamped at work. So there was a lot of inability to have like emotional presence
Yes.
because he was so overworked.
Yeah.
But the money was good. The
Yeah.
the problem with that is because of being paid out all in spring term, for a lot of it is that they paid through the nose in taxes,
Yes.
because of how bonuses and stuff work. Um, so there was a lot of taxes being pulled out, but the money was still fine. But then,
Mhm.
right in the middle of that, because we and tie our insurance to our
Employer.
employers, they actually had to switch insurance right in the middle of cancer treatments.
Yes.
How did that work?
So I am thankful. I'm sure that this is tied to some of the legislation that happened when Obama was in office. Correct me if
Mhm.
I'm wrong. But thankfully, insurance companies at this point, if you have a cancer diagnosis and you lose that insurance for whatever reason partway through your treatments, the insurance that you had during that initial diagnosis is required to continue your coverage for that particular diagnosis until it is done or you have another insurance. So thankfully, I was diagnosed in the middle of April. I had my surgery near the end of May. Joseph lost coverage at the end of June. I was very lucky in that I didn't have to do chemotherapy or radiation. So basically, most of my doctor visits were done by the time Joseph's insurance cut off. Unfortunately, it was not covering some of the other side doctor visits that I needed to have covered. And Joseph and I went for a month just paying out of pocket because even though he did his best to get Oregon State University, where he is now working full time, to get the new insurance coverage going for us, they were dragging their feet because it was summer and no one's there. So it took us a month to get insurance again. So for the month of July,
Mhm.
we had no coverage.
So, two questions. One, what did your what did your doctors say when you told them about this transition? Because I assume you told them ahead of time.
I did.
How did they react to that monetary piece?
Usually there's the insurance, the sigh about how bad our insurance, everything is set up. Anyways, but both my surgeon and my oncologist said it's okay. Like they were the ones that actually told me that the insurance will continue to cover for what is happening, even if I no longer have the insurance coverage technically, because it's all tied to the diagnosis. So that was very relieving to hear directly from the doctors. It
Mhm.
was not the first time they'd heard it before.
Which is good that they're addressing that financial concern because while they are doctors, they end up having to deal with a lot of financial stuff, especially if we are vocal about our financial situation, our insurance situation,
Yes.
instead of internally fretting and going, okay, do what you need to do and
Yeah.
hoping you can just cover it later.
Yeah.
Being an advocate for yourself in what's
Yes.
happening because they also have lots of resources.
They do.
We had the patient care coordinator was making sure that we had meals.
Yes.
They had access to gas gift cards if we needed them.
Yep.
We had
They would.
other, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I think they would have even helped arrange transportation had that been
Okay.
needed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
transportation, things like that. So there was a lot of things that can have a trickle down from a diagnosis you weren't expecting or you were expecting financially. So then the secondary question to that is
Mhm.
because you switched insurances right in the middle there, did you have to pay two out-of-pocket deductibles?
Yes, which was the really, pardon my language, was the really shitty part because
Hmm.
we were very lucky in that when Joseph was employed at LBCC, we were able to have an HSA.
A health savings account.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Yes. And we, once we found out about my cancer diagnosis, and especially because Joseph had so much money coming in, we basically shoved, I think we maxed out what we were allowed to put into that health savings account.
Hmm.
And then we were able to reimburse ourselves so that
Hmm.
we weren't
Hmm.
cash poor, so
Yeah.
to speak.
And the cool part about health savings accounts is they cap you at a certain amount per year, depending on whether you're single or married. But also, it is pre-tax dollars, so
Yes.
it reduces your taxable income. Did you go into another health savings account, or did you go into something different?
No.
Leading the witness. Sorry.
No, 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 it's okay. I mean, you were there for all this, so you
Yeah.
know it. No, the frustrating thing is when Joseph changed jobs. The insurance that we have is technically better. Like it's better coverage overall. However, because it is better coverage, we do not have that high deductible that allows for us to have an HSA. Instead, we have an FSA, a flexible savings account, which I think are awful. They very much frustrate me.
Yeah.
And we have decided to not put the maximum amount of money into that
Mhm.
because I can't use it. I
Mhm.
literally can't use it the
Mhm.
same way I use the
Yeah.
HSA. I just don't.
Yeah, the difference between a flex savings account and a health savings account is health savings accounts double as IRAs,
Mm.
individual retirement accounts, and you can build on them year after year. With flex savings accounts, you use it or you lose it. So they're really good if you know you're going to have a lot of out of pocket
Expenses.
expenses, and that's your only choice. Um, but if you have the choice of both, I always say to go with an HSA because if you don't have all those out-of-pocket expenses, you can at least create a savings account with your HSA.
Absolutely. And the other frustrating thing about an FSA versus an HSA is that with an FSA, like even if I literally paid my oncologist's copay standing in the oncologist's office, the FSA said, whoa, 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 whoa. Could you please send us all the documentation for that? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So HSAs didn't do that to me.
No, HSAs will have you check a box on your taxes.
Mhm.
And then if the IRS reviews those taxes and go, I don't believe all of this was actually part of qualified HSA expenses, then you have to prove it.
Oh, sure.
So you have to do things like keep your prescription receipts, keep your documentation.
Absolutely.
Um, they are far less stringent on the front end
Yeah.
than FSAs
FSAs.
are.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was mm,
May,
the
June.
May, yeah, May and June. What other things did we have to take care of? Just physical stuff. We had to move your computer
Yes.
for work.
Yeah, we
Um,
rearranged part of the house.
mhm.
Um,
We had to move your sleeping arrangements
yep.
for after surgery. We had to get a different rig.
Yeah, we were lucky
uh,
enough to borrow my grandmother's old transit.
yes, because you couldn't get into your truck.
Nope.
You have a business. You had to put your business on vacation mode.
Yeah, for like 4 months.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, there was a lot of just like this physical stuff that we needed to do. Oh,
Yeah.
also updating your advanced directive
Yes.
because you had surgery.
Yep.
And making sure your will was up to date.
Yes. That was something that thankfully right after the diagnosis we basically sat down and were like, okay, what do I need to make sure is in place because if something happens.
Mhm.
And the nice part is kind of nice. So my grandmother had passed in late January of last year, and then your grandmother had passed not long after that. So we
Mhm.
had both just gone through some, end of life stuff.
Mhm.
And so it was already on the forefront of our brain. And we're like,
Right.
okay, this, and this need to
Mhm.
be updated or made.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and while 37 is not the normal time that most Americans, most people are thinking, okay, I need to get my stuff together. It's something that I would like everybody to have together because
yes,
you don't know if you're going to get into a car accident. You don't know if you're going to have a diagnosis and get to do all of this before you get into the car accident.
right.
You don't know if you're going to have an injury on your property at work, whatever. Stuff happens, right? That's what we talked about all last episode.
Yeah.
So to have a will, a power of attorney, and a health advance directive in place helps your loved ones know exactly what you do and do not want done, in case the absolute worst happens.
Absolutely. Because I know that, Joseph and I had several conversations. I had conversations with my parents. I had conversations with you and Sean. It's like with all of our friends, be like, this is what's happening and this is how we're approaching it.
Hmm. Yep. So the other part of step one
Mhm.
is the emotional side. How did you process said emotions in the beginning?
Oh my God. I think shock is just like the best word because you're not expecting that. And basically, for me, because everything happened so rapid fire, unlike some folks, like from initial finding of the lump to surgery was 4 months, maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so it was really fast. And even now, it's like I'm still processing some things to a certain extent. But emotionally speaking, I just felt very off kilter. Like I wasn't really sure what to do with myself
Hmm.
half the time
Hmm.
because I knew that there were going to be a lot of big changes, but you're looking at a cliff and you have no idea what's at the bottom.
Right. What about your emotional support? We've talked about your physical and your
Yeah.
financial support, but what about your emotional support?
So I'm very lucky. I had an excellent support system. Like Joseph, as much as he could be there for me, he was. You were there for me all the time, which I really appreciated. All of our other friends were there for me. Like, I was incredibly lucky. I have a very good emotional support system. Family, obviously, like just everyone. Everyone was there for me.
From a person with having had this diagnosis, how could someone from the outside come in and support you? Like, in what ways should they or should they not approach a situation?
That is a really good question. And it really is dependent upon the person. I tend to joke about things. We have a lot of gallows humor in our in our friend group. Even pulled the what the kid with cancer did that joke maybe more than once. Um,
Maybe
because
so, yeah.
because for me dealing with it with laughter was one of the easy ways for me to deal with it. And so thankfully my friends know me well enough that they're like they'll joke along, but if I'm like, "Hey, I really need this thing," they were like, "Cool, let's do it." And if you're someone who doesn't know what they need, try to be brave enough to ask. Like it's not easy. I get it. I am not the greatest at asking for help. A lot of our friends in our friend group aren't. So we push each other to be like, hey, 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 you should ask for help. So that's something I tried very hard to do myself. As the friend, like if you are the friend of someone going through something like this, ask them. And if they're not able to answer you, think about the little things that you know that they like. Like, are they someone who likes a latte occasionally? Just pick them up something and bring it to them. Are they normally someone who's just very introverted? Go take a book and sit with them and just be in their presence so that they know that they are loved and supported.
Yeah, from my outside perspective, having done this more than once, I was running under the assumption of kind of whatever you need.
Yeah.
So you don't question the person on what they decide to do. If they decide, because Alicia very easily could have decided to have a lumpectomy, but that would
Mhm.
have guaranteed her at minimum radiation.
Radiation.
She decided for a full double mastectomy,
Yep.
which in some people's eyes might be extreme, and in some of our friends' eyes was extreme. But at the end of the day, it's not our choice any more than it's our choice for someone else to get a tattoo or get a piercing or dye their hair purple or anything anything else. It's still not our choice. Our choice is to be there and be supportive of that person and not to question them, not to question
Yeah.
their decision making.
Yeah. It's and I that is yeah, that's absolutely true. It was hard. Like I did have a period where, I had talked to some of the friends in my support circle and they were like, have you thought about this, this, and this? And so it did rattle me, but then I came back to what do I want to do? And that's the thing. You have to check in with yourself and be like, what is my gut telling me? And I'm like, I know that I do not want to deal with this a second time. I'd already been looking at doing a reduction and I'm like, take them. I do not need them.
Yeah.
So just off they go.
Yeah, so that was part of it from a outsider standpoint, but also because I had a lot of insider knowledge from my mom's diagnosis, I was able to kind of verbally prepare her for some things like drain tubes,
Yep.
and where she would struggle potentially physically
Yes.
speaking. Like mentally I can't tell her that because it's going to be different for everyone. But from a physical standpoint and reminding, like, as much as we mentally want to go do something, we're not going to have all of the energetic levels. Also, considering that at 37, this was your only major surgery.
Yeah.
So you've
Yep.
never had a major surgery to kind of gauge off of,
No.
right? And then I would just ask questions. I would say, okay, is this helpful? Is this helpful? Is
Yeah.
this helpful? And I ended up starting a Facebook page because there was a lot of people asking how they could support.
Yeah.
And then I started
The meal
a meal train
meal train,
with a
yes.
calendar so people could pick times to come visit instead of just showing up. Kind of the same thing like when you have a baby.
Yeah.
Like have times that you're like, okay, I'm okay having someone here
Yeah.
because there's still a high risk for infection. There's still a high risk for getting someone sick with a lowered immune system. Things like that could
Yeah.
could cause issues. Um, but then also I'm not gonna, be able to make food or
Exactly. No, it's one of those
go
things.
grocery shopping or stuff like
No,
that.
I'm very thankful that you set those things up because one, it was, especially the Facebook page, very easy way to just get the information to our, family, friends, loved ones, and all that, where it was just one easy channel.
Hmm.
And then the meal train, I really appreciate that because we had several family friends make us really good tacos. What did I mean? Macaroni and
Hmm.
cheese, like just
Yeah.
these things that made our lives easier
Hmm.
for that first month.
Hmm. And it was interesting and kind of odd because while there was three other adults in the house that
Mm.
could have been doing this stuff, I was working overtime, Joseph
Joseph
was
was
working
working
overtime,
overtime.
Sean was working
It
overtime.
was,
So all of us were also in a weird position where
yeah,
we were also struggling because
yes,
now we have this diagnosis. We had a 5-year-old at the time. My son was 5.
yep,
And so even with him, like it's a weird understanding for anyone really to grasp, but for a 5-year-old to go, oh, I'm sniffling, I can't go hug Auntie, I can't go snuggle her, like it
that
doesn't
was
compute.
that was so hard because the week before surgery he had a cold and we're like, baby, I'm sorry, you got to give air hugs.
Yeah.
Oh, that was rough.
But one of the things I could do for him was actually go to the library and they have these critical care bags, is what they call them.
Which was awesome.
And there's a bag for of videos and books and things about friends and adult people in our lives that have cancer, as well as for somebody who's passed away or somebody who's had a new baby or just
Yeah.
weird things that can really uproot a child's life.
Yes.
And we read and looked at a bunch of that stuff so he could kind of get the concept of what was happening.
Yes.
And then also he uh I made ways for him to try and help you, like bringing you blankets, bringing you
He
ice
did
packs, bringing you stuff like that.
he did such a great job, and I appreciate that you were able to direct him and be like, okay, so we know that Auntie needs this. Why don't you go take that to her? And it was perfect because it made him feel important and a part of the process, which can be hard with little ones.
Mm.
So to have those tasks that are easy enough for him to do and makes him feel included, and I felt very loved.
Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to mention on the meal trains was don't be afraid to like be picky sounding when you're setting up a meal train for someone or when you are setting up a meal train for yourself.
Mhm.
And the meal train is literally just someone able to like Grubhub you food or send you a gift card or actually bring you a meal and they just kind of pick a spot, which is cool.
Yeah.
But you kind of a lot of us feel guilty for asking for help because our sense of community has been trained out of us. But meanwhile, when we do ask for help, we feel guilty asking for help with exception. But when I made that meal train, I had to ask for several food issues. Alicia's very grumbly guts when it comes to
Mhm.
oregano.
Yeah.
My son's allergic to garlic. My husband's allergic to duck eggs. Her husband's allergic to
Artificial
artificial
sweeteners.
sweeteners.
Yeah.
I can't do gluten. I can't do shellfish, things like that. And so there was a lot of please make us food, but
But
also don't include these things, which can make it complicated.
yeah.
But it's better to do that than the person go, okay, I made you this thing and you can't eat
I made you
it.
spaghetti.
Yes. Yeah,
Crap.
with oregano and
Mhm. Garlic
artificial
and wheat.
and garlic and wheat and artificial sweeteners. Like and then nobody can eat it. Now it's going in the trash and we're being wasteful, right?
Yeah.
So be okay also saying I would love to see you, but only from this time to this time. Or I would love to have a meal from you, but please don't include these things. Or please do include these things.
Exactly. Because if you communicate your needs as clearly as you're able, and I get it, sometimes the spoons, there's not enough of them. But
Hmm.
when you are able, if you communicate clearly, the people who love you and who are supporting you, they want to be there. They want to do it the way that you would like it done.
Yeah. Yes. So going back to last episode, assessing the situation, we kind of talked about that. We talked about your financial situation. We
Mhm.
talked about your insurance situation. We
Yeah.
talked about your employer situation. We talked about your small business situation. We talked about your physical limitations within our household,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, they may or may not have wanted to try and duct tape me to the couch because, and for our interesting situation, like uniquely in that there's four of us adults, one person with cancer, and three that are completely overwhelmed because the workloads just went through the roof. Spring of 2024.
yeah, that's true.
Thank you. And I was like, I want to at least help by doing dishes. Unfortunately, then I popped some of my stitches. So
Yeah.
I had to just sit, and that
Yeah.
was really, really hard.
Yeah. Mostly hard mentally.
Yeah.
But so as a not the person with the diagnosis, you could also give them tasks they can do. Maybe that's sticking a load of laundry in front of them and letting them sort socks.
Yes.
Maybe that's having them sit with a kiddo and read books or
Yeah. Or
something,
watching a movie
or
with
watching a
Bud.
movie,
Yeah.
something where they feel like they can do something and they're not just a burden on everybody. Because I feel like you probably felt like you were a burden a lot of the
Absolutely.
time.
And that's exactly it. It's trying to find that thing between like, I know that I'm ill, I know that I'm healing, and like, I feel like a freaking bump on the log because I
Mhm.
can't do crap to
Mhm.
help.
Well, and I get it because when I was pregnant, I was so sick I couldn't hardly move off the couch. And the number of times that Alicia and my husband told me, Sean told me, you're growing a human. It's like, no, you're keeping our friend alive. Like,
Yeah.
and it's hard to get past that mentally as the person who is
Stuck.
in the diagnosis and
Yeah.
stuck at that particular moment, that you're not just being a burden on everyone.
Yeah. So it was nice hearing those reminders reflected back to
Mhm.
me, just as we did with you.
Yeah. So the third step is making that game plan. So you informed everybody you needed to.
Yep.
We talked to, did you have to talk to any stakeholders as far as people who were um, expecting something of you or expecting money from you that you didn't mention earlier?
No, thankfully, again, because at that time Joseph was making ridiculous paychecks
Hmm.
for that short amount of time, we were actually able to effectively stock some money away. We paid down some extra debts, HELOCs specifically,
Hmm.
home equity line of credit. That way, if we needed to draw from that during the time when he was losing that job, excuse me, we would have access to that money, and we're privileged that we had that ability. As far as, again, going back to my employer, i.e., my dad, thankfully he and I were able to game plan something that worked very well for us. And like my mom would bring me the daily time cards and stuff to take care of. And so I had that level of flexibility that a lot of people don't. But if you talk to your employer, you may find that they are more willing to be flexible than you think they are. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Or if you're working for an employer who does make you afraid, maybe it's time to part ways anyways. But that's just my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's where you come in with what are your legal rights? Where's your
Yes.
FEMLA? Where's your Oregon medical leave? Where is your short-term and long-term disability
Yes.
access? Like, what legal rights do you have to the situation if you've got someone who's unwilling to work with you? But the number of people who are willing to work with you because you communicate is higher than you think.
Absolutely. And since, a lot of folks we know, they work for smaller businesses or smaller corporations, even, a lot of those places are willing to work with you. They, especially if you've been there for any length of time, they've put money into you. Usually they want to keep you because you are trained the way they
Hmm.
want you
Hmm.
trained. So,
Yeah.
and if they know that you're willing to come back, they will work to make that gap work. They'll help you figure it out.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last set of people
Mhm.
was your medical team. How many medical people did you have to talk
Oh
to?
my gosh. A lot is the answer.
Yeah.
The main ones for me, I had my surgeon, my oncologist, and then all the physician's assistants, like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh. Thankfully, the client care coordinator, Kathy Nepper, she helped us navigate so much because she made my first sets of appointments and basically just helped keep us on track. I It was a lot of different people that we talked
Mhm.
to over that time period.
Yeah. And you had a functional nutritionist as well, right?
Yes, thank you.
You had a physical therapist.
Yep.
You had to talk to your OB.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was but
Yeah, so there's a lot of different people that come into any of these situations, but everybody kind of had to be on the same page.
yeah.
So having a conversation, um, if you could improve one thing when you were dealing with your medical professionals, what would it have been?
The one thing that I would change is that I wish we had more research into women's health. Because one of the frustrating things for me, and this may be TMI for some folks, sorry, I have an IUD, the Mirena, which is works by using local hormones when it's put in your uterus. And because we literally don't have enough research, I had to give that particular form of birth control up, which thankfully then my husband was willing to take care of it on his side of things. But it's very frustrating. There's just not enough research on a lot of women slash female health and hormones and all that jazz. So more of that would be great. Otherwise, I could not have asked for a better experience. I truly had the best of care that I could ever ask for.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that they, as an outsider, for me, it looked like they did a good job communicating and working with you as an
Yes.
entire human,
Yes, they did. They really
including
did.
mental health.
Yes.
And not, okay, I just do this part, and I just do this part. They worked as a group. But because you were cross-platform on sometimes you were with Samaritan, sometimes you were with Willamette Valley Cancer Institute, you ended up having to fill out paperwork over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. There was time when I'm like, I'm really tired of filling out these forms.
Right,
I have put my name and social security number down more times than I ever thought I would in a,
right.
48-hour period.
Yes. How or what was your priority? Not so much on the financial end because it
Mhm,
sounds like you guys had that taken care of,
mhm.
but on the like mental health, physical health, emotional health, relationships, so on and so forth, throughout the process.
Um, Especially in the beginning, it was a lot of we're flying by the seat of our pants. At least that's how I felt. I
Mhm.
was like, we're taking this a lot of times one day at a time, sometimes a week at a time, depending on what was happening. Um, I so much of it is a blur. Like I remember it all, but there was so much happening, and then your body has to come to a screeching halt, and your brain's just like, I don't, what? What is happening here? I'm not sure. So the priority was to, keep in touch with people. So thankfully, I knew I could text friends, and I did a lot. We got to watch things in the evenings. As a friend group, like, shoot, what was it we were watching? Fallout.
Oh,
So
yes.
that was nice because it gave a sense of normalcy because it was just something that we would normally do where we would like pick a show and watch it together. So that was really nice to have that emotional stability in that I knew that I was stable in my home. I knew that I was stable with friends and family and people that love me. And it was just one of those, it was good. I mean, there were some rocky bits, but after time, things have worked itself out. And I would say that overall, like I'm in a really good place, which is nice. And I'm really lucky.
Um, when it came to, was there a difference before and after surgery as far as way things were prioritized for you?
Yes, because before surgery, like the month before surgery, it was me just trying to get literally as much done as I could. Like in terms of while I still physically could, while I still had the mental clarity to do so as much as possible, given everything else that was going on. And afterwards, it was just like this weird full stop. Like I just was like, okay, so now I just hang out
Mhm.
and just try to not be bored while I heal. I mean, listen to books, watch movies. It was nice. Bud got to hang out with me. We ate popcorn. It was good. But it's one of those, it was very strange to be fully reprioritized in that I just need to allow my body to heal itself. And that requires me doing a lot of nothing. And for me, that's hard because I'm used to just doing whatever I want
Mhm.
whenever I want.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did it shift at all? Because normally if somebody says, "Hey, I need you," you just jump.
Yeah.
Well, how how did that change?
Well,
For those of us who always say yes when someone needs our help.
um, you have to learn how to say no and be better about it. You don't have a choice.
Hmm.
And thankfully at that point, most of, the friend group and family, obviously, were like, we know that you're healing. So the only thing we're going to ask of you is, would you like us to bring you something? Or, do you want to hang out and talk on the phone, hang out in person if they're
Hmm.
close enough physically, that sort of
Hmm.
thing.
And just as much as saying yes to those things, also knowing when you need to say no to those things
Yes.
because you don't want to
Overdue.
exhaust yourself. Because we flip to not only those of us who just go and do all the time, but also
Yeah.
those of us who tend to want to make other people happy all the time,
Yes.
which is you.
I know what I'm talking about.
In having to force you to prioritize yourself, how did that go?
It's hard.
Hmm.
I mean, it's something that it's an ongoing thing that I've been learning and trying to practice. And having a double mastectomy will really make you slow down.
Hmm.
And you have to prioritize yourself. And so I learned to be better about that. And it's like, I knew, okay, I'm good for this much in a day. And then I know that I'm just going to be sitting, probably with my eyes closed. And then, after a couple hours, I might be able to do something else.
Hmm.
But knowing that I would have no choice but to
Hmm.
slow down.
Yeah. Was there a difference in the way you needed help before surgery versus after surgery?
I'm still short. So prior to surgery, for me, my biggest problem is I am short. And so in our household, I just ask for a tall person or find the step ladder when I need to get something. After surgery, what was my limitation? Was it 5 pounds?
Yeah, five
Or
pounds,
maybe
10 pounds,
five pounds.
something
Yeah,
like
it
that. I
was
don't know.
it was very low. So
Yeah.
basically I could pick up a plate of food.
Yeah.
Like that was about it. Even bending down and putting things in the dishwasher was not something that I could do because
Yeah.
I tried that somewhere between 7 and 10 days out. That's when I popped some of my stitches.
Yeah.
I mean, even showering, like Joseph helped me shower for the first 2 months almost, I think,
Hmm.
because I just physically couldn't. I
Hmm.
physically could not shower myself. You just kind of stand there and you're like, okay, scrub me, please wash my hair, thanks, dry me off.
Yeah.
So it was a very humbling experience because I mean, even though both you and I have helped a lot of folks in our life, especially some of our older family members
Mhm.
or family members like your mom who needed significant care,
Yeah.
it's definitely very different when it's yourself. And so you learn a lot of humbleness from that.
Hmm. Um, let's see. Like two more questions.
Sure.
When do you feel like, even though you didn't have radiation and you didn't have
Mm.
chemo, when do you feel like life started getting back to some sort of quote normal?
Um, I would honestly say late last fall was when it started to become more normal. So, one thing I didn't mention as a course of treatment for my particular breast cancer, which was estrogen receptor positive, but HER2 negative, which is good. It means it's not the aggressive form of cancer. Um, I am on tamoxifen because I am premenopausal. So that's just the drug that they use for younger women, basically. And it really fucked up my mental health. I I have never had a time in my life where I've ever been so anxious or depressed. It was really awful. And I it took me hours in the morning to be able to have any mental clarity. And so going back to advocating for myself, I talked to the doctors and I said, "Hey, we need to do something about this because otherwise I will stop taking this medicine because I can't live like this." So they worked with me. They dropped my dose, and they also put me on venlafaxine, which is an antidepressant. And for me, once I got the right level of antidepressant in my system, that balanced with the tamoxifen created a quality of life that I find acceptable and good. Like I feel like me again. But it took, let's see, start taking tamoxifen in July. I didn't get the venlafaxine until early September, and so yeah, it was probably like November-ish
Mhm.
before I really started feeling like myself again.
Mhm.
And now I definitely feel like me again. It's like I've had a long enough period of time where it's like, yes. We could get it. Now, I
Mhm.
do have to be mindful about my energy levels. Sometimes I try to push myself too far, and I am made aware of that when my body's like, and it just kind of tries to crash for a day or two. But thankfully, it's been a good learning process for so many things for myself.
Mhm. Yeah, and going through all the way, so past post surgery time,
Mhm.
but when you were just taking the cancer drugs
Mhm.
and the SSRs and whatnot, like
Mhm.
where did you need support and how do outside people support in that type of situation?
Um, Again, one of the things that was really supportive was being able to be around the people I love, even if I felt like just like I was in a hole. Like just I remember one day, my in-laws, Joseph's mom and dad, they brought over salad makings and made salad, and it was really nice. Like that was in the middle of when I was going through the really bad mental health part, but having fresh greens and having their company was really nice. And then I had some good leftovers later that day. It was one of those during that time period, I ate when I could eat. I probably lost 20 pounds because it's just I didn't have a desire to eat at all,
Mhm.
which is weird because I love food. So having friends and family that were able to just be around physically,
Mhm.
because for me, I'm very extroverted. Like I like being around people. So even if I'm just sitting there and I can be around someone, it helps when I'm having a shit day.
The one support system you haven't spoken about yet is your cancer group.
Oh, yes, forgive me. That I'm very lucky and as well in that we have a young adult cancer group in that came from the Samaritan Group and the Willamette Valley Cancer Institute. I don't remember who precisely started it, doesn't matter. But it is a group for those of us that are younger in life that was created when enough younger people were diagnosed with cancer in our area that about 10 or 15 years ago, they said, hey, we want a group that's for younger people because we have different concerns in life than a lot of those specifically with breast cancer that are diagnosed when they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And so, I mean, I have one gal in my group who was in her early 20s when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was the aggressive form. And so she's been through hell and back, but she still has a great attitude. And we have the group where we meet once a month, usually on Zoom, so we can chat. We learn. Sometimes we'll have a speaker, so we'll learn something new. And then we just do check-ins for like an hour, hour and a half, and just say, hey, how's it going? Are you struggling? Do you need some help? And you see some really great community built around that, where those of us who were newer to the cancer lifestyle got to rely on the expertise and the wisdom of those who had been through it for much longer. So that was a really wonderful thing, and I still am a part of it. In fact, we've gotten to have a few in-person meetings, which has been wonderful. It's nice to see them in person. But to have a support group around people who are going through or have gone through what you were going through is really important for your mental health. I know it was for mine. It was nice to talk to people and just be like, hey, this is garbage. And they're like, it is. And I'm sorry, it will probably get better. And if it doesn't, here's what you need to ask your doctors about because it might help. So having that wisdom to lean against and that support was really wonderful.
And you had a cancer mentor, right?
I did, yes. Again, Kathy, she's amazing. She, in that first meeting, I guess, Veneer and I were sitting there and she was being like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how things are going to proceed. She said, and would you like to have a mentor? I thought about it for a moment and I was like, yeah, because this is completely uncharted territory, I think I should talk to someone who has been there, done that, is still doing it. And it was the best thing I could have done. I haven't talked to her a ton because, again, I'm lucky in that I have a good support system in my regular life. But it was really great to have those conversations with her or just be able to text her and be like, this thing sucks. And she's like, it totally does. And just know that she's experienced that and that she understands where I'm coming from. So it's a great program. The mentorship is really nice.
Yeah, so that is kind of going through the process of taking care of this emotional and physical stuff,
Mm,
assessing the situation, making a game plan, and then actually doing the thing.
yes.
If you could sum up, like, give the two best ways someone could support you and the two worst ways someone could support you,
Um,
like do's and don'ts.
yeah. So do listen to the person. Um, do ask them questions if they seem receptive to it, because that may help you understand how you can help your loved one going through the process they're going through. Um, don't try to make it about yourself. I don't know how else to explain that, but make sure that you are focused on the person who needs the care. Um, it can be hard sometimes because we can be like, oh man, this person's sick. How do I deal with it? Unfortunately, at that moment, the person who's sick needs you to be focused on them.
Mm.
I won't lie. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any other specific tones.
Well,
Sorry.
and that's a good one because those of us who have people in our lives who think about themselves and then about other people
Mm,
know exactly who you just had pop into your brain when you were listening to this.
mhm.
And they know that that's how that person is. So hopefully that person will recognize and go, you know what? At the very least, be able to advocate and say, hey, this isn't about you right now. It's about me. And if
Yeah.
that's not something you can do right now, please walk away.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, sorry, I need some me time right now.
Right,
Yeah.
because as much as that person might think that they're helping you, if it always comes back around to the way they feel, how they're responding, so on and so forth, they're not helping you. And it needs to be about you. So,
Yeah.
say that person's decided that they want to do your dishes, even though what you asked them to do was to vacuum the floors,
Yeah.
they're not listening to you. They're
No.
not being there for you. If you say, "Hey, will you please take my kid to the park?"
Yeah.
and they're trying to go grocery shopping for you, they're not listening.
Name. Yeah.
And while they are being helpful, they're not using their ears to actually do what you said. They're doing what they think you want them to do.
Correct. Yeah. Listen, 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 listen. Like, oh, sorry. Just said listen, listen, listen. Linda, Linda, Linda.
Yeah,
Anyways,
exactly.
anyways,
Yeah.
but no, listen to the person and what they're asking you for. I know that sometimes we think we know better in the situation, but if they're asking you to do a particular thing, they have their own reasons. So just do it.
Mhm.
And if you can't, say, I'm really sorry. I'm gonna have to bow out for a little bit. That doesn't mean you have to bow out forever during the process. You can always come back in and say, "Hey, I would love to be of help to you again. What can I do?" And then actually do the thing they ask you to do. So
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing that I have that I can give for advice.
Yeah. So, I have two questions left.
Mm.
Long term, how has things changed for you, between pre-cancer thought processes and post-cancer thought processes as you do life?
So for me, one of the biggest things is that I don't think I had mentioned it on this podcast, but I think I did on the very first interview I did with you.
Mhm.
Is that Joseph and I hold two rentals, and we have for many
Mhm.
years now.
Mhm.
You've helped us manage those, and you've helped
Yes.
me paint many,
Yes.
many
Many
paintings,
times.
many times. We live 45 minutes away from one of them and half an hour from away from the other one. And after my cancer diagnosis, I took a very hard look at what do I want to be doing and where do I want to be spending my time. And I realized it was not having to go and fix up two houses that I didn't live in. For me, it those houses serve their purpose and they are actually going to help us roll the snowball more uphill, going towards bigger goals that we all are working on. But I don't need to hold on to those homes anymore. And that was hard because one of those houses was Joseph and I's very first house, which we purchased from your
For my
grandmother
grandma. Yeah.
and Dan. And I loved that house deeply. But I know that that's not where I want to live anymore. It no longer fits Joseph and I's needs or lifestyle. And so it was time to let it go. Or the house in Albany. That one we had purchased with the full intent that it was going to be a rental. It was never
Emotional attachment.
Emotional attachment. Thank you. So that one is much easier to let go of, but fuck me, did it take a lot longer to finish. Sorry.
It's a much larger house.
It is. It's about twice
Um,
the size of the other one.
but I know you were thinking about getting rid of those
Mhm.
before the diagnosis, and then
Correct.
afterwards it just kind of solidified it
Yes.
for you.
Yeah, I'd already been considering getting rid of the one that was actually slightly closer to us, but I had no emotional attachment to it. But after the cancer diagnosis, it's just like, no, I don't have the capacity, nor do I want to have the capacity deal with to deal with those properties anymore.
Did it change any of your other financial priorities?
Um, did cancer specifically change any of my other financial
Or
priorities?
the process
This,
you went through with the diagnosis and so forth, like did it change anything?
I think the biggest thing that's changed is that I really would like an HSA again. In that it would be nice to be able to bank for the unknown.
Mhm,
And that is something that Joseph and I are working towards.
mhm,
Like we set aside funds in different sub accounts for travel, for rainy days, for certain insurances that, you have once a year or whatever. So it's trying to be mindful again about where we're putting our dollars,
mhm,
but mostly in that remember to enjoy life and use the money that you are saving to
mhm,
actually do some
mhm.
things.
Yeah.
Like we got to go for a friend's 40th to Salem, Massachusetts. That was amazing.
Mhm,
And it wasn't as expensive as I expected it to be.
mhm.
And so it's like, use some of that money that I'm saving
Yeah.
to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just life's not just about paying bills and
Exactly.
dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are not living to just work and then die.
Right.
Like do something fun.
No, I do want to throw in from a financial perspective
Yes.
that while you guys have life insurance
Mhm.
and you have long-term care riders,
Yep.
what you didn't have was a critical care rider. The
Correct.
difference being is long-term care is when you get dementia or need to go to assisted living or you have a debilitating car accident, something
Yep.
like that. And it helps you pay for the cost of having someone come in and help you with daily tasks.
Correct.
Critical care is when you are diagnosed very suddenly with
Mhm.
something like cancer. And it would have helped cover some of the bills and stuff. So
Exactly.
while we never know who is going to get cancer or when, or who's going to end up in a car accident or when, or what the case is, or who's going to get run over by a horse. My kid
Right.
broke his hand today.
Oh,
Like we never know when those things are going to happen. It's a small amount of extra money to pay on a life insurance rider to have critical care insurance as well as long-term disability insurance.
yes.
Okay, so my final question that I asked you, in 2020 when we first
Oh
started
my
doing
God.
this podcast is now after all the things that have happened over the last 5 years, what does wealthy mean to you?
Wealthy means having a safe place to land and knowing that no matter what bullshit life throws at me, I am able to at least be cared for, have basic needs met, and still get to enjoy life. Like, and sometimes it's as simple as, hanging out on our property and looking at the mist hanging over the hills, because
Mhm,
it's beautiful when it
mhm,
does that. Or enjoying the sunshine and the lilacs, which need more sunshine, but that's a different problem. But no, truly, as I've gotten older and going through this particular cancer diagnosis, to remember to slow down a bit and remember that being wealthy is getting to be here. It's getting to be alive, getting to do some of the things that I actually want to do in life and doing it with the people that I love.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Um, Thank you for joining us on for joining me on the Wanting to Wealthy podcast, where we talk about everything, finances related. Next episode, we'll be talking about different types of insurances, and then I can go into a sub-series of more specific about each individual type of insurance. I touched on a lot this particular episode, and I have throughout the past several episodes, but it's something that we are constantly adjusting and shifting and having to deal with as life throws life at us, right?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah.